Hi, I'm Cameron Bonzi. I'm the Vice President of Marketing with Costa Maine Brands. And my guest today is Diane St. John of Natureworks Garden Center in Northford, Connecticut. And Diane, you and I have known each other, I don't know, 20 years, something
Long,
like that.
long time. I'm just starting my 15th year at Natureworks, so I
Oh,
probably known
wow.
you for 14
Oh,
years, I'd say.
all right, 14 years. But NatureWorks is a incredible place. It's a destination garden center,
Yep,
very much into teaching organic practices.
right.
And one of the things that I know is a passion of yours is pollinator gardens.
Yes.
What is pollination? I mean, should people know what that is?
What is pollination? Boy, you know, I pollination is the act of flowers making seeds or turning into vegetables that we eat or blueberries or so all flowers need to be pollinated by pollinators. So for example, like a tomato plant, the bumblebee goes into the flower
Yeah.
and shakes around. It's buzzes in there. It's called buzz pollination, and that's how you get a tomato. If that bumblebee didn't go in there, you wouldn't get a tomato. So
And
it's
they're feeding, right? They're actually picking up the pollen, right?
yeah,
For
yeah,
protein. Yeah.
yeah.
And
So it's pretty amazing how nature created that, you know. So
well,
and
and it propagates and it continues that plant species.
right.
We naturally have a need to create our seed and continue as a species, whatever
Exactly.
living thing we are, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And there's much more of an interest today, especially over the last 10 years. Pollinators are threatened because of the environment, because of global warming, the way we've treated the world. Um, so you must get people asking these questions and asking, how do I create a pollinator garden? How do I bring pollinators to my yard? And you guys have some handouts. How do you approach that when somebody comes in?
We do. We get every time we get a lot of the same question, we write a handout.
Yeah.
So customer can take something home with them too and read it later. And a lot of the most popular ones are on our website, which is natureworksgardencenter.com.
And I went on your website and I
Oh, good.
downloaded some of your handouts. So,
Okay.
and I'll actually use it to ask some questions too. So it's
Oh,
great. You guys have done a great job. That's a great resource for people. I would encourage people to go there and download those.
yeah. So for most people, it starts out, you want flowers in your garden and it's pretty, you know. So I guess in my situation in my life, I had some kids. I had three kids, and it was really fun to watch the butterflies outside.
Yes.
The bees, the butterflies, the birds would come, and um, my kids were just naturally drawn to that. So I wanted to have more of that. I wanted more flowers. So we took um, an area at NatureWorks, we talk about lawn elimination, you know,
Yes.
about making your lawn smaller. And our yard had a huge lawn. So we marked out a 40-foot by 140-foot section of lawn that we never went on, we never played with. It was just an unused area, and we let the grass grow. And then this was in 2011.
So
So it's been a while.
you literally just said, all right, I'm just going to leave this space alone
Yeah.
and
And
let
what
nature do what it
happens?
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So the grass grew, it got really tall, and in it there was clover, there was like the pink, the tall clover, the red clover, some Rudbeckia popped up. So there was like these random flowers in there. And then we mowed a path through it. And then all of a sudden, not only my kids, but every kid in the neighborhood was coming over
And
and
going
running
through.
through the paths in that area. So that just egged me on more. So then I tried to read about meadows and how to do them. So I added more flowers. I added seeds. And now that's my background right now. That was, if you're watching
Beautiful.
this on a picture, there's a picture of my meadow for the background. And that was just a few years in, and just putting seed down and letting your grass grow. Now it's the most beautiful part of my garden. So, and it's filled with pollinators. So I'll go out and I'll say I'm gonna go work in the garden. And
So, question there. When you say
yeah,
it's filled with pollinators, you, okay, so you let it grow naturally,
yep.
native plants mostly, I would assume.
That's what I added native plants by adding the seeds of native plants
Okay.
in the meadow the second year.
Okay.
This has been a whole process year by year to get it to this beautiful flowering the meadow it is today. But it just started with letting the grass grow and seeing what came up. I put seed down, native plant seeds, for 2 falls in a row. I would mow the meadow really short in fall and I'd put seed down. And then the next spring, things would grow. So I started getting milkweed and echinacea. It's filled with the
Wow.
purple cone flowers now. The rudbeckia, the yellow coreopsis. It's like a magnet for any butterfly or bee flying in the area to come to that area of lawn now, which is fantastic. I highly recommend letting your lawn grow and seeing what happens.
Well, yes. I mean, number one, we should not care what our lawns look like, really, but, and we should just let them grow. So you had this larger space.
Yeah,
You had this patience, because I think patience is so important in gardening and raising kids.
right,
Um, but and you said, I'm going to let this happen. What about somebody that has a smaller space? And maybe also somebody that they're in a community where they have um, standards of appearance, that your house has to look a certain way.
right.
Um, what happens in that situation?
You could create kind of a small, like mini meadow, I guess I might call it, but it would just
Sure.
be a pollinator garden, a nice flowery garden. So you could, if you already have an existing area to plant, that's great. If you want to get rid of some lawn, you can smother the lawn with some cardboard for a few months and then plant into that. Or you can, the hard way to do it is to take the lawn off, you know,
Yeah.
and then you'd come to the garden center and you'd say, what plants should I plant? I have a nice sunny area. What's native? What would attract wildlife? We would match you with plants for your space. So it's good when you plan a pollinator garden or you're planning a flowery garden to have succession of bloom. So you want something that blooms in, you know, like right now I have hellebores blooming in my garden and it's the
Wow.
middle of March and I've
Yeah.
seen bees on those hellebores. You know,
Already.
that's not a native plant, but it's a plant I love, so I'm gonna keep adding hellebores to the garden.
Well, and that's what you actually say that. You
Yeah,
don't want to you want to have you want to have somewhere, you actually suggest somewhere around 70% native plants, but you also say we're not against non-native plants as long as they're not taking over and as
right,
long as it's balanced and it's something that you like, correct?
right. As long as it's not an invasive plant,
Yes.
then it's good. Like if I have for example, a peony is not a native plant, but I can't imagine my garden without at least one peony in it. I think I have three at the moment, but
Yeah.
it's an old-fashioned, beautiful flower. I'm not going to not have it in my garden just because it's not native.
Right.
So, and they attract ants. So there's always something that the plants, how can I say this? Plants are food.
Yes.
So you
Yep.
plant plants that attract things to come and pollinate them or to drink nectar from or to eat the leaves. We have to start thinking in our heads that it's good if your plant is being eaten because it means it's providing nourishment for something. Like the monarch butterfly is the classic example.
Sure.
Its egg hatches on milkweed and the caterpillar begins eating the leaves. So that's good. You want to see your milkweed with leaves, you know, with holes all over the leaves. We might have gotten off topic there though.
Well,
And
no, I mean, because, and I know that's a passion of yours too. But the fact is, when you're in a couple of things, we talked about patience in the garden. We're talking about taking the time to see what comes up. When you start talking about pests and a variety of plants in your garden, the variety of plants is also going to invite a variety of pests. And that variety and that diversity of pests, insects, whatever you call them, actually balance everything. Not one insect is going to take over and do damage. They're going to actually, even the insects will be competing with each other and potentially feeding on each other, so they balance.
and that's especially important. That's the reason why you need an organic garden, one that's pesticide free. Because if you choose to spray areas of your yard, you're going to diminish the amount of beneficial insects that live there. And the beneficial insects are the ones that eat the destructive insects. So in my yard, I really have not sprayed anything in 12 years,
Yeah.
15 years, something like that, you know. And before I was an organic gardener and passionate about this, I was the typical, I have to spray my lawn, I have to kill the violets, I've got to, you know, and now I have a completely different mindset where I don't spray anything at all ever. I just work on the soil, and the yard is a complete habitat. It's a perfect balance. If I see a problem on a plant, like if I see some aphids on something, I don't spray it. I just leave it alone. And within a week, there's like a bunch of ladybugs there eating the aphid. It kind of balances and takes care of itself, the pest problems.
It's an amazing piece
Yeah,
because letting it grow, letting it balance, letting it take care of itself, giving it basically what it needs. The way that I always think about it is with the kids, is
right.
give them the basics, don't overparent, and they'll be fine. And that's the same thing that you've done with your backyard, is that you don't need to overreact and bring something in. And when you're creating a pollinator garden where you have this biodiversity and you're attracting all these pollinators to the garden, that just enhances the whole process.
Definitely. So a lot of times I'll go say I'm going to work in the garden, and I'll have my camera in my back pocket, and I actually go out intending to work in the garden and, you know, maybe clip some things or cut some flowers. And I end up taking photographs for 2 hours of all the cool things that I find in there. So it's like a science experiment in your backyard that's beautiful. And it makes you feel good. It's a healthy place to be. It's my therapy.
I think that that is a big key for gardeners. Therapy, relaxation, work,
Yeah.
feeling like you're contributing. You said that people come in, it's a consistent question that people ask. Like,
Yes, we would ask them, you know, about their situation. Is it in sun or shade, or is it wet soil, dry soil? You know, we try to kind of match some plants to their situation. And I like to show people, like, you know, if you plant this echinacea, this will be blooming in July, but that's only blooming in July. So you need something that blooms in June. So let's look at some plants that bloom in June. And then you need some pollinator plants that bloom in August and September. So you want to have a succession of bloom throughout the season to keep the pollinators in your yard.
right, because that's what they're attracted to. That's where they're
Yeah,
going to come in.
yeah,
And you have a whole list. You actually break it down. April bloomers, May bloomers, June bloomers, July, August, September, October. So
right.
somebody can come to your place in your territory. What's
Yep.
the zone that Connecticut is?
We're zone 6.
So in a zone 6 in Connecticut, you're going to have a handout that says this is what's going to attract, and people can go down through and look and say, "Oh, I love those." They can actually pick what they need. Are you able to supply the seed for those, or do you have to send people other places?
We do sell seed.
Yep.
And, you know, like for here, I have some to show actually. Like Some of my favorite pollinator seeds, these are sunflowers. You know, you can't have a pollinator garden without sunflowers. So things like that, the annuals we sell seeds of, zinnia, butterflies and bees love zinnias, hummingbirds too. So those we plant mainly from seed. But perennials we sell and I use mostly by small plants, you know, or gallon-sized plants. It depends on how fast you want your garden to be. You know,
Yeah,
you
because
can get
not everybody's going to have your patience, right?
exactly. So they're going to want to come home with, you know, 12 plants that are going to be blooming for the season. And they might leave with plants that are just green because those are going to bloom later. It's really fun to come to a garden center like every few weeks because the benches change constantly, like
Oh yeah.
what's in flower. So you might love something in May. Everybody wants to shop in May and get their gardens done. But I encourage people who are interested in pollinators to keep going and looking at plants that bloom all season.
I think that's great. And coming in and enjoying and having what you enjoy in your own backyard. And then also the knowledge. I was looking at a survey in the fall where people get their gardening information from.
Hmm.
And 28% of the survey said they get it from their local garden center. That was the biggest educational piece, not online.
Yep.
And that's why we sell to independent garden centers because we know their knowledge, we know their passion. It's great that you came on today. Do you have any other ending tips to say get out there, plant a pollinator garden?
A lot of people start with a vegetable garden.
Yeah.
We get a lot of vegetable gardeners and we encourage them to use lobster compost and, you know, from coast to Maine
Oh,
and
lobster compost. Costa
oh, who
Maine
makes
makes that?
that? Yeah.
Ah, okay.
That what I want people to know is if you have a vegetable garden, you need to bring the pollinators in. So you need to have lots of flowers around
Yes.
your or around your vegetable gardens. And that's a good way to get people started in pollinator gardening. When they see pretty flowers next to their vegetable plants and they see the hummingbirds come and you know it kind of gets you hooked a little bit and then it gives you a better vegetable harvest too. So I guess a great place for a pollinator garden is within and around your vegetable gardens. So I guess that's one parting thing. I'm surprised on how many vegetable gardeners don't have flowers.
It's
So
really interesting, and that's a great point. It's about that biodiversity too. It is about the pollinators. Those plants have to be pollinated to really bear the best fruit. So you're going to be getting a lot of free abundance of harvest too. So it's about the diversity. It's about buying local, getting that local knowledge. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm hoping that you'll come back. Again, it's Diane St. John with Natureworks Garden Center there in Connecticut. Check out the website again is what?
natureworksgardencenter.com.
And they have great knowledge. Diane's great to talk to in person, as you can clearly tell. Go to your local garden center, and I hope to see you next time on the Coast to Maine Growing Good podcast.
Thank you, Cameron.